What's up, everybody? Alabama will be without a key starter in the spring. Shane Beamer gets a raise and some SEC teams to watch for in the spring portal. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, let's dive into it as we've got some news and notes going on around the conference. And we start over at Alabama as they have finalized the date for their annual A-Day this spring. We don't normally hear spring game dates this quickly. Normally, February is when we start to hear, but Alabama, Alabama University's official NIL collective shared the news Friday morning that this year's A-Day game will be played on April 12th. So mark your calendar, Bama fans. A kickoff time has not yet been announced. The last couple of years, they've been on prime time. They put them on the ESPN. Last year was our first chance to see Kalen DeBoer's coach team in the spring game, so they put that one on big ESPN. But Kalen DeBoer acknowledged the incredible support the Tide received from their fans last spring. More than 72,000 fans filled the seats at Bryant-Denny Stadium that day. And this will be the first opportunity to get a look at what the Alabama offense is going to look like post Jalen Milroe. Of course, quarterback battle with Ty Simpson, Austin Mack. Of course, Keelan Russell, the freshman, will be coming in and competing for that job. But A-Day will mark the end of a very important spring for Kalen DeBoer. I mean, year one was not great for the Alabama standard. And so further details will come at a later date. Now, we did get some not so great news for Alabama coming out of the spring. Starting linebacker Deontae Lawson told the Crimson Tide Sports Network several days ago he will miss all of spring practice while he rehabs a knee injury he suffered during this season. The junior from Mobile been a big part of this Alabama defense the last few years. But, look, you know what you have in him. So, when you have a veteran like this, he knows the playbook. He knows all the stuff. So it's not the end of the world that he's going to miss spring ball. But the season got cut short with that injury he suffered in that November loss at Oklahoma. He said, I will, quote, definitely try to stay around as much as I can. But, yeah, before I am active, probably be fall camp. So he said he's walking now. He's still progressing through his rehab, participating in modified workouts. But Deontae Lawson, one of the big-time playmakers in the SEC last year, piled up 76 tackles, despite not even playing a full season. 36 of those solo, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. Also had his first career interception, as well as 4 passes defended. So he will be the leader of that Crimson Tide defense next season, no doubt, but he will not play or not partake in spring practice for the Crimson Tide. All right, other news in the SEC. Shane Beamer receiving a significant raise and a long-term contract extension following the year he had at South Carolina. Friday morning, Carolina's Board of Trustees approved his new contract. He is set to earn $8.1 million per season starting next year. And we'll see a $100,000 raise each season. His new deal also now runs through 2030. The contract comes after one of South Carolina's best seasons, going 9-3, just missing the college football playoff. Marked the first time South Carolina has won more than 8 games in a year since 2013. That was back when Steve Spurrier went 11-2. According to USA Today's head coaching salaries database, Shane Beamer, he was 33rd nationally in salary this past season. His new salary will have him tied for 15th with Brent Venables at Oklahoma. Of course, now expectations raised for Shane Beamer. If you missed our interview with him on last week's show, we encourage you to go check that out on our Locked On SEC channel. But look to bring back quarterback Lenore Sellers, edge rusher Dylan Stewart, big-time playmakers. And so, look, Carolina fans, sky's the limit. They are legitimately expecting a college football playoff appearance. 10-2 will get you there. One other note from South Carolina, Nick Harbor, big-time tight end / wide receiver, not going to participate in the indoor track season that is underway and could skip the outdoor track season as well, as he wants to solely focus on spring football at South Carolina. Shane Beamer, talking with reporters on Saturday, said right now Nick wants to focus on spring practice and football and developing there, and that's kind of where we are right now. He also said Saturday that Harbor's play down the stretch this past season contributed to that decision. He said, certainly we played really well and made some big plays, got better as the year went along. I think he realizes he has a big upside, big future in football if he continue to progress. But he also understands a small window of time before your college career is over and wants to capitalize on that. Spring football for South Carolina will begin March 19th. The outdoor track season starts 2 days later, so obviously there's a direct conflict there. Harbor did qualify for the Olympic trials in the 200 meters last June, but he did not participate. 6'5", 235 pounds, sophomore, at 26 catches, 376 yards, and 3 touchdowns last year. So looking for an even bigger role heading into next year. One other note here on South Carolina related, tied to Ole Miss. They've been going head-to-head for several transfer portal recruits this offseason, and the state newspaper there in Columbia reporting during a South Carolina Board of Trustees meeting on Friday, a board member discussed how Ole Miss landed a linebacker away from South Carolina after offering more money. They didn't say which linebacker it was, but former Grambling State linebacker Andrew Jones had originally committed to South Carolina before flipping to Ole Miss 2 days later back in December. Carolina board member Dan Adams said, according to the state, quote, "We just competed for a linebacker. We were going to offer him $400,000, and Mississippi took him for $800,000. He added, "You were playing in the wild, wild west out there." So there you go. We'll see what he does over there in South Carolina. Just the new world we live in college football. Paying athletes and winning bidding wars is legal. Over at Tennessee, they have landed a player out of the portal. Yes, the portal window closed, but for those teams in the national championship, they were able to enter the portal and had the window to decide if they wanted to go elsewhere. And Notre Dame offensive lineman Sam Pendleton, at Zenit's reporting, he is signed with the Tennessee Vols. Pendleton was a part-time starter for the Irish this year. Former 4-star recruit, entered the portal following Notre Dame's championship loss to Ohio State on Monday night. Finished 6th on the team in offensive line snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. Gave him a grade of 63.2, and he will join a Tennessee offensive line that's facing a lot of turnover there. So we'll see if Sam Pendleton can earn a starting spot on that Tennessee offensive line. A few other notes here. Texas A&M, they were reportedly hiring Rutgers' John Perry for a role on their offensive staff. That's from Pete Thamel. He worked as an assistant wide receivers coach at Rutgers the last 2 years and is a veteran coach that worked with the Houston Texans as their tight ends coach and receivers coach. So John Perry heading to Aggie land to go coach with the Aggies. All right, how about some visits here? Auburn is reportedly bringing in former Notre Dame wide receiver for a visit. Jaden Thomas spent the previous 4 seasons in South Bend with the Irish. Thomas played all 16 games for Notre Dame last season, 18 catches, 167 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Entered the portal, and sounds like he spent 4 years in Notre Dame, will be a grad transfer. But Auburn obviously bringing in Jackson Arnold, quarterback from Oklahoma. They're bringing in wide receivers Eric Singleton and Horatio Fields already. So let's keep an eye on Jaden Thomas from Notre Dame, see if he ends up there. Over at Georgia, Kirby Smart not wasting any time trying to work on that 2026 Georgia recruiting class on Thursday. He had an in-home visit with one of the top prospects in the class with quarterback Jared Curtis. 24/7 Sports rates Curtis as a 5-star prospect, the number 2 quarterback and number 1 player out of the state of Tennessee in the class of 2026. So Kirby Smart really needing to lock down some quarterbacks for the future, as Brock Vandagriff left the last offseason to go to Kentucky. Carson Beck left this offseason to go to Miami. They lost Dylan Raiola to Nebraska. So got to keep building up that quarterback room there at Georgia. And last note here in our Around the Conference segment, the college football playoff, they officially announced the location for the 2027 title game. If you missed this, that'll be held in Las Vegas in January 2027. So here are the next few years, just for SEC fans that are hoping to get back to a national championship finally. Houston last year, no. New Orleans or Atlanta this year, no. 2026 national title game, so that'll be a year from this month. Remember, so it's the 25 season, but the game's played in 2026. That will be in Miami. So a year from now, the national championship game in Miami. A year later, January 2027 will be Vegas. January 2028 will be New Orleans. January 2029 is Tampa. And January 2030 back to Miami. So I guess they owed Miami a little bit of a double there. But yeah, next year it's in Miami. So get to stay in the South and hot environment, and then Vegas, New Orleans, Tampa, Miami. I like it. Let's just keep them all south of the Mason-Dixon. Don't need any championship games up there in the snow, as we saw in some of those playoff games this postseason. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we've got that piece from On 3 on some of the SEC teams maybe needing to look for needs in the spring portal. That's coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at TurboTax. And this is a message from Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. And now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert will help you find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at turbotax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Take care of tax time with turbotax.com. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. On 3, they've been doing some off-season pieces already, and they had a piece up over the weekend listing some teams that have needs to address in the spring transfer portal. And of the 10 schools they listed, 5 of those were SEC schools. They said basically winning in the portal means filling roster spots with experienced portal talent, but trying to fill all those gaps in the winter window can be difficult, especially with schools having to offer competitive financial packages. So On 3 broke down 10 schools that a portal needs to address, which will be in that 10-day spring window, which, mark your calendars, will be April 16th through April 25th coming up this year. So just less than 3 months away now. So we'll kind of run through these, give you what On 3 had to say on each. And if you're a fan of one of these teams, see if you agree, if this is a need in the transfer portal for your team. We'll start with the Florida Gators. They added several pieces in the winter window, highlighted by UCLA wide receiver J. Michael Sturdivant. We're trying to find a backup quarterback. It's proved to be a struggle. They had Charlotte transfer Deshaun Purdy signed before he flipped to Wake Forest. And then they landed former Tennessee, former Louisville transfer Harrison Bailey. But Gators have room to add depth on the offensive and defensive line in the spring. After adding just one player on the line of scrimmage in the winter, Florida lost 5 edges to the transfer portal while picking up UMass edge Kofi Asari. He had 3 sacks this past season. Adding another offensive tackle will be a solid pickup. Left tackle Austin Barber is back, but Florida has to replace right tackle Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. So, again, that's from On 3 Sports. Florida, they want them to beef up the O-line and D-line, and see if they do that in the spring transfer portal. How about Georgia? Say the Bulldogs have already addressed their most glaring issue, wide receiver. They had drives stall out this past year due to drop passes. Of course, you lost Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, and just look at the rookie NFL seasons both those guys had. Those were big losses for that offense. But Kirby Smart went to work. He had a Texas A&M's top receiver in Noah Thomas. They also got one of the fastest players in college football from USC in Zachariah Branch. But with Damon Wilson's decision to transfer to Mizzou, Georgia needs to add a starting edge / outside linebacker from the portal. Michael Williams and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins all went pro. Also, Trevor Etienne's decision to enter the NFL draft leaves a little bit of a hole as far as experienced running backs. Now, they do bring back Nate Frazier, who was a freshman this past year, led the team in rushing yards and touchdowns, but could use a little veteran running back depth there. The final question mark is quarterback. Of course, Carson Beck transferred to Miami. Gunnar Stockton closed out the SEC title game, played in the playoff game, but Georgia does not have a proven, experienced starter in their quarterback room entering the spring. That may be one. Maybe you go get a journeyman or just somebody to add some, experienced clipboard holder who can kind of be the eyes and ears of Gunnar Stockton from the sideline. Next up, SEC team they list is Oklahoma. Again, this is on 3 Sports. They write, Oklahoma landed one of the top players available in the winter portal in Washington State quarterback John Mateer. If Brent Venables is going to turn around the Sooners this year, having Mateer is going to be a major piece. Sooners have also replenished their wide receiver room, but they will need to target players at corner, linebacker, and tight end. Starting tight end Bauer Sharp transferred to LSU. They did pick up Pitt State's Will Huggins and Kennesaw State's Carson Kent, but adding another tight end is expected to be a priority for the Sooners, with Danny Stutzman gone at linebacker and Lewis Carter and Deshaun McCullough entering the portal. Adding another linebacker in the spring is not out of the questions. They did pick up Oklahoma State linebacker / safety Kendall Daniels, who has 240 career tackles, 7.5 sacks, 5 interceptions. So that was a pickup, but it sounded like some more pieces on that defense for Oklahoma. Over Tennessee, on 3 writes, the Vols were able to keep nearly everyone they wanted during the winter spring portal, hanging on to wide receiver Mike Matthews, safety Boo Carter. Vols also picked up Duke transfer running back Star Thomas following Cam Seldon's portal departure. But the Vols still would like to add pieces to the offensive line and wide receiver room. Josh Heupel landed Notre Dame offensive lineman Sam Pendleton, as we told you last segment, played 7 games at left guard. And even though Tennessee secured former 5-star wide receiver recruit Mike Matthews, the Vols want to continue to address the wide receiver room. Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton are off to the NFL. Squirrel White transferred to Florida State. So they would like more bodies in that wide receiver room. And then lastly, the 5th team they list here is Texas A&M. And here's what they say. The Aggies arguably put together one of the top portal classes during the winter window, landing some of the top portal wide receivers. Kevin Concepcion from NC State, Mario Craver from Mississippi State, Micah Hudson from Texas Tech. A&M also picked up edge rushers, Dayon Hayes, Samuel Mpemba, TJ Searcy. Mike Elko's program is not done assessing that wide receiver room. However, Hudson has stepped away from day-to-day football activities, and a timetable for return remains unclear. I don't know if we mentioned that. That news did come out about a week or so ago. As big of a highly sought-after player as Micah Hudson was, it was like, man, A&M landed him. And then suddenly just, last week we hear he's taking a break, stepping away from football for personal reasons, and wish him the best of luck. But on 3 writes, Texas A&M also lost their top returning wide receiver, Noah Thomas, who, of course, transferred to Georgia. He led the Aggies with 39 catches, 574 yards, and 8 touchdowns last year. Mario Craver will only be a sophomore. Concepcion stood out in 2023. Wasn't as good last year, but A&M will work to bring in another wide receiver this spring. Texas A&M is just, it's fascinating because I can't wait to see what they do. What that offense is going to look like, because, you're going to have Reuben Owens back fully healthy, ready to go for next season at running back. See what the rest of the running back room looks like. But, Marcel Reed was only a redshirt freshman. I mean, he'll be a redshirt sophomore, and if he can build off of those numbers, I mean, he had some really nice numbers this year when you consider that, he was the backup and didn't take over as a starter until, was it about mid-season? but 1,800 passing yards, 540 rushing yards, 15 touchdown passes, 7 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's 22 total touchdowns in, a little more than half a season. Connor Wegman got hurt, or Connor Wegman left the LSU game, and he took Marcel Reed took over. But nonetheless, A&M should be very interesting. I think they bring back a good number of guys on their offensive line, and got to replace some big names on their defensive line. But linebacker core should be pretty good. Scooby Williams, Torian York will be back. So anyway, there you have it. That's On 3, kind of putting out 5 SEC teams that they feel like have some major needs in the the winter portal, which will be in just under 3 months away. Again, not saying there's plenty of other teams that could use more pieces. Alabama has some needs. I mean, everybody's got some needs, but those are the ones that On 3 listed as key positions that really need to be addressed by some of those teams. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Guys, Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there is no way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it is predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy for you to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Of course, prop bets, very popular for Super Bowl, makes things a lot more fun. FanDuel's got all that. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you could place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets on the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you will score $200 in bonus bets. That is at FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel. They are an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And we'll talk a ton of basketball here on the show, but this time of year we usually start to dabble a little bit. And for those who haven't been paying attention, you're really missing out. It has been a heck of a men's college basketball season so far in the SEC. It's been super, uber competitive. And, man, almost every game since conference play started has been must-see TV. But I wanted to recap a little bit on what happened over the weekend. And first, the big news. I mean, we got to start with Auburn. Janai Broome returned in Auburn's game against Tennessee. He had been hurt, and we ended up hearing that, he was getting close to coming back. I think as of Thursday, it was like, oh, he might practice today. And then he was back out there on Saturday night for the first time since injuring his ankle back on January 11th. So really only missed about 2.5 weeks. Missed the last 2 games for the Tigers, and his status for the game was listed as game time decision, but he got the green light during warmups. And look, Auburn needed to pull one out. It was not a pretty game as they won 53-51 over the Tennessee Vols. But Janai Broome off the bench, playing 33 minutes, 7 of 19 shooting, did make a 3, had 13 rebounds, 7 offensive, 6 defensive, 4 blocks, 16 points on the night. Just his normal dominating self. So good to see him back for Auburn. And look, they are they were kicking butt even without him. And that was a big win to take down number 6 Tennessee. So it was number 1 Auburn beating number 6 Tennessee over the weekend. Again, like I said, wasn't the prettiest of games, but Auburn gets it done. Other games from the weekend, Vanderbilt, they were the giant killer for the second straight Saturday in Nashville. This time they took down number 9 Kentucky, 74-69. Set off for a second straight court storming moment at Memorial Gym. Last Saturday, they outlasted Tennessee and then stumbled on the road against Alabama Tuesday night. And then it was back to Nashville where they pulled out the win against Kentucky. Now, they will be fined according to the according to the SEC. They'll be fined for storming the court. Knocked off Kentucky, setting off the latest wild celebration that will cost the school $500,000 for storming the court. Other games, Texas, they stormed back from a 22-point deficit to stun number 13 Texas A&M as Tremont Mark delivered the dagger. Wade Taylor threw one up at the buzzer, but Texas comes back to beat Texas A&M in Austin, and Texas really needed that one. They were in danger of dropping to 2-5 in conference play. Instead, you're at 3-4 and still very much alive. Other games from the weekend, Alabama held off a scrappy LSU team that gave them all they can handle. Mark Sears found himself benched by Nate Oates, but Bama wins 80-73 against LSU. Florida put it on Georgia on Saturday, 89-59, winning by 30. Florida looking very much like that top 5 ranking that they have. Mississippi State pulls out a 5-point overtime win at South Carolina to improve to 4-3 in conference play, 16-4 overall. At South Carolina, they are winless in conference play, still at 0-7. Ole Miss continuing to slide a little bit here. They lose at Mizzou 83-75. So the Ole Miss Rebels now 4-3 in the conference, and that's 3 straight losses after they started 4-0. Mizzou, scrappy bunch, man, 5-2 in the SEC. Didn't think they would be this good this year. And then lastly, Oklahoma outlasts Arkansas 65-62. John Calipari now 1-6 in SEC play with the Hogs, 12-8 overall, and not what they were expecting there in Fayetteville. They did get their first SEC win a couple days ago, but losing home to Oklahoma, who's 2-4 in the conference, not a good one there. And so coming up Tuesday night, we will have Kentucky at Tennessee, should be a good one. Oklahoma at Texas A&M, and South Carolina at Georgia. And then on Wednesday, we'll get Auburn at LSU, Bama at Mississippi State, and Texas at Ole Miss. So it should be a good slate of SEC hoops action. A few other notes here before we call it a show. Daniel Jeremiah, in his latest NFL mock draft, he has got a drop in draft stock for both Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers. And there's been a little bit of a spike in, belief in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, both expected to be the top 2 quarterbacks taken in this year's draft. But NFL personnel highly conflicted about the next best group of quarterbacks. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, the top 2, but kind of Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers in that next best group. And Jeremiah said he questions how injuries impacted Quinn Ewers throughout his career. He did mention Milroe's got a huge opportunity this week to impress at the Senior Bowl over in Mobile. So we'll be tracking that and seeing what Milroe's performance looks like throughout Senior Bowl practice this week. But just very interesting. Both kind of expected to still be maybe back end of the first, or Milroe's still expected to be a 1st-round pick, maybe back end of the first, middle of the first. And Ewers kind of most people have projected as a day 2 pick, but high 2nd round or something like that. So we'll see. We've still got plenty of time before the NFL draft gets here. One other note here: 3 former LSU stars were named Offensive Rookie of the Year finalists. Washington Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels, Jaguars receiver Brian Thomas Jr., and Giants receiver Malik Neighbors each made the cut. The other 2 finalists, Vegas Raiders tight end Brock Bowers and Denver Broncos quarterback Bo Nix, of course, who also played in the SEC at Auburn. So good to see a bunch of either guys who played in the SEC or spent a good majority of their careers in the SEC, like Bo Nix, all making that cut. The winner will be announced, by the way, February 6th. So good stuff there. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. And hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can find that there. You can also check out Locked On College Sports with Spencer McLaughlin. Does a good job keeping up to date on the entire world of college football. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Everybody have a great day out there. Get your week started off right, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.